Hello, I'm Linda Harvey, President of Mission America, and I'm also on the board of Protect Ohio Children. And what I'm going to do today is walk you through something that may be a bit shocking, and that is the inappropriate sexuality content that is starting to show up for children in elementary schools. Yes. And if that's shocking, just stay with us and we'll reveal quite a bit of very troubling information and a lot for parents and communities to watch out for. So, Mission America and Protect Ohio Children have for a long time exposed the problems with sex education, comprehensive sex education, which is the condom centered, Planned Parenthood friendly type that you do not want in your school, versus authentic abstinence, which is what we have as for instance, in the state of Ohio as the expected standard by law. And that is what we should be aiming for. But that's for middle schoolers and high schoolers. So, what about children? How are the people that are always so anxious to sexualize our children, how are they either through cluelessness or through predatory agendas, quite frankly, how are they introducing these topics to our children? So I'm going to show you some slides now. So let's begin sharing some slides which will walk us through some of this information. So the first slide I have after this one, let's go to the next slide then. So here are the trends. So we go to the next slide then, please. So the trends in K through 6 inappropriate sexuality education are that there is more graphic material that's being presented all the time to children in various settings and under various subject areas, and I will talk about those. There is a new trend in a law called Aaron's Law, and there are many such laws around the country. We have one that just started here in Ohio where schools have some requirements under Aaron's Law. This presents a whole new nest of opportunities. I'm going to go through some of the Ohio Department of Education. It's now the Education and Workforce, and some of their recommended lessons on this Aaron's Law. And then, of course, there's the old puberty and hygiene lessons that we've had for decades in schools, but they're now being misused. And always, the LGBTQ agenda stands out there as something that should is always an opportunity to corrupt children further, and it's getting more and more aggressive all the time. So let's have the next slide then. So Aaron's Law in Ohio is child sexual abuse prevention education, and it began during the 23-24 school year. And once a year, children at K through 6 grades are to hear lessons on how they can be aware of the possibility of child sexual abuse. And of course, then doesn't everybody want to prevent child sexual abuse? Of course we do. The question becomes, how are these lessons presented, by whom, what is the content, and then, of course, is the child ready for this? Is this something that we should be presenting to children? Yeah, it's an incredibly sensitive topic. So let's have the next slide. One of the ways in which it's already been misused in a number of laws is that Planned Parenthood was invited into the elementary schools to be the presenter. And we know just how irresponsible they are and reckless with children in general, even teenagers, and especially younger children. So Ohio, Ohio Value Voters, other pro-family groups made a pitch to the legislators involved to amend the Aaron's Law to require that no abortion providers or those that recommend or do abortions, like Planned Parenthood, would be allowed to be presenters and present a curriculum under child sexual abuse prevention. So there are a number of other states that join Ohio in that same requirement. And so that's really good. We're very glad in Ohio that we have most of the time such a strong pro-family and pro-life legislature. So let's have the next slide then. So the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce has some recommended lessons, curriculum that they recommend that some are for purchase, some are free, that schools can adopt to meet this Aaron's Law requirement. There's a problem with them. And an overview area is that there are some that look on the surface to be okay, but there are some that do not at all look okay. And they're talking to children as if they can consent in the future, look forward in the future to your own independent decisions about sexuality. That is a very irresponsible way to guide children into their adolescent years. Some use explicit online resources as additional resources, and they refer to sites that either the people didn't look at it or they're quite aware that these are inappropriate and very explicit, and they're inappropriate completely to be referring to children for more information. They also promote gender change ideology. That seems to be everywhere. You wonder if this is prevention or is it grooming? So the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce needs to take a look at these curricula, and many of them are national curricula that you will run into in other states as well. So I'm going to walk through a few of them quickly. Before I do that, I just want to tell you, let's go to the next slide. So this topic is everywhere. All of a sudden, book publishers, as we know, are very anxious to reach the elementary school market. And we had a situation here in Ashland, Ohio, with the public library where they had several books that were about puberty. They were marketed to late elementary school kids, and they are completely inappropriate when you go into these books, like this one that I've pictured here on the slide. Puberty is gross, but also really awesome. Well, it's way too explicit in their details about anatomy and all of that, but also all about gender ideology, sex assigned at birth, and using all that terminology that is inaccurate, scientifically inaccurate. Sex and gender are revealed at birth or before. They are not assigned at birth. And things like, if you think you're confused about gender and you're a girl, here's how you can access chest binders to suppress your breasts, you can produce permanent harm to healthy breast tissue. This is, again, reckless, irresponsible. So the community was able to limit those books to some extent, but that's what's out there. And so some of this also shows up in school libraries as well. So let's go to the next slide. So I will tell you a little bit about one of the major topics that is gone through here with some of these lessons, the idea of consent. Planned Parenthood does a lot on this issue to try to rope kids into the idea of, again, it's called sexual autonomy, that is independent of the adults in your lives, your parents and their advice, any other, faith values you have the right to make these decisions. So here's the issue. On child sexual abuse prevention, a big message is, yes, you need to know as a child how to say no. But the idea of consent can be manipulated where the message is quickly inserted that you also have the right to say yes. Or they talk about unwanted touches. Well, that's fine, but if a child has been groomed for quite a while by a predator and is being seduced routinely, they may think in their own mind, these are not touches that are unwanted. These are touches that are wanted, even if the child is 9 years old. Think about that. You don't plant that idea in a child's mind. Every adult that is has sexual contact with a child should be reported, and every child needs to know that if this topic is going to be out there. So nothing about wanted or unwanted. Adults doing these things to you is always inappropriate. So let's go to the next slide then. So this is a national curriculum that is a social emotional learning SEL provider. They also have a section on child sexual abuse prevention, second step. Let me just tell you quickly, if second step is in your school, you do not want it. We have a partnership with a wonderful resource and expert, Marcia Metzger of Parents on the Level, and she has put out webinars explaining exactly the problems with second step. But as far as their child sexual abuse prevention model, they also have some things that are not appropriate, as we might expect. For instance, again, the idea of consent is in there, explored very much so, leading children to sexual autonomy. Well, here's one quote: your body belongs to you. You get to decide who touches your body and how he or she touches it. If you don't like a touch or the touch makes you feel uncomfortable, it's unwanted. Well, it's unwanted, but what if it's wanted? Again, I think about all of that. So the next step then. So you don't want second step in your in your um, in your school at all. And the other thing about second step is that they have a parent company that is called the Committee for Children. So you don't trust second step because the Committee for Children has a very unscientific and inappropriate definition of normal child sexual development, heavy on masturbation. They seem to be obsessed with normalizing masturbation among children. The only problem is if it's done in public, but every other way they are very, very big on this. So this is just not a trustworthy group. In Ohio, second step curricula are found in the Brunswick schools, in Miami Trace, in Upper Arlington, in Mount Vernon, in West Geauga, and in Strongsville. And we know they're elsewhere as well. So the next slide, please. So here's a couple of other curricula recommended in Ohio. One is called Child Safety Matters, and they were used in Tip City, Ohio. There were complaints there by the community because they use, and so does Second Step, and so does another curricula called Speak Up. They refer for more information to a website called Love is Respect. I don't know who decided to put this out there, but if you go just a couple of clicks on Love is Respect, they normalize early, again, adolescent teen sexuality and LGBTQ identity and behavior. You do not want that in your school at all. Next slide, please. Another one is called the Council on Child Abuse. It's a Cincinnati program. It's overall good, except they use you got to look at the media that, again, for the resources, a song called We All Sing with the Same Voice. It features two dads, normalizing same-sex parenting, which is another slick and inappropriate method being used to sexualize children in grade schools. So the next slide then. So there are, before I go through, talk a little bit about puberty and hygiene, I'll just quickly mention a couple of the other Ohio Department of Education and Workforce curricula that are recommended. And some of them seem to be okay on the surface. They are Educate to Protect, Child Lures Prevention, Empower Me, Fight Child Abuse, and I Can Tell. They all seem to be okay on the surface. There's another one called Child Help, Speak Up, and Be Safe. At first, it looks okay until you find out they're associated with the American School Counselor Association. You do not want counselors in your school joining ASCA, the American School Counselor Association. They're all about every progressive woke agenda out there and allowing and recommending that counselors bypass parental authority and counsel children about sexuality matters and gender matters. You do not want that group advising the counselors in your school. Also, the American School Counselor Association is associated with CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's kind of the originator of social emotional learning, and they are all about DEI and LGBTQ agendas and ushering all of that and including inappropriate sexuality education into your school. So Castle and ASCA, you don't want associations with them. So here we have another area, puberty and hygiene lessons. Now, you'll remember, most of you, for decades, we always had, in many schools, the school nurse would come in and talk to the girls and then separately talk to the boys about the changes in your body, girls starting their periods, and so on. This opportunity, quote unquote, for puberty and hygiene education has become an opportunity for way too explicit material to be presented to kids. One of the curricula and books often used is called Puberty, the Wonder Years. So in their grade 6 curriculum, and it's also their books that go along with this, they talk about respecting all families. In grade 6, their kids are, one of their goals is to get kids to plan for their future sexual health. Again, no, your future sexual health should be, I'm going to wait until marriage and remain abstinent until then and keep my life healthy and uncomplicated. This is one of the ways in which many schools are finding that either through cluelessness or deliberate agendas, children are being sexualized by way too early information about sexual response, about pleasure, about all of that. So let's have the next slide. One of the things that I found is that we had a teacher from a large urban Ohio school, a teacher of 5th graders, come to us and talk about how upset she was about the puberty and hygiene education that the school nurse was presenting to her children. The school nurse insisted on getting way too explicit in the anatomy lessons, insisted on having it in boys and girls mixed sex classes together. And so what happens at the end is it became an opportunity for the boys to tease the girls about starting their periods, about the school nurse went into detail about how you may have to think about contraception in the future, in order to prevent pregnancy. 5th grade boys can be quite immature. That's one of their responses to being embarrassed. But the girls were humiliated. You wonder, where are the radical feminists when we need them? They should be here saying, this disrespects women. Yes, it does. It disrespects women to have it in this way. But this is the trend. So let's have the next slide then. Planned Parenthood is on the forefront of all this. Wherever they can get in, they have a thing called puberty talks. 5th graders in California, and I reported on this a couple of years ago, in a PTA sponsored, PTA paid for assemblies, mixed sex assemblies, to come in and talk to children about details about things like, and excuse me for the graphics, but ejaculation and erections in these mixed sex assemblies. They also told children that they could talk to a trusted adult if they had any questions. Again, where's the referral to your parents? There's more and more trend toward bypassing parents, and there's another one. And they also talked about gender ideology. One of their slides referred to the infamous gender-bred person, the asexual person that talks all about how sex is assigned and constructed by you. So this curriculum is also showing up in the state of Washington, in Texas, and elsewhere. So we need to be very aware, for one more of many, many reasons, to keep Planned Parenthood away from our children. And when you think about that PTA, the PTA paid Planned Parenthood as consultants to come in and do this. We don't want that in Ohio, and we don't want that anywhere. So let's have the next slide. So the other thing is what you want to always remember is that there has been a trend for a number of years for um, homosexuality and gender deviance to be promoted throughout the grades, and now it's very heavily promoted in the K through 6 classrooms. There are a number of ways that happens with books about changing your opportunities to change your gender, books about different kinds of families, families headed by two dads or two moms, or transgender parents. So be alert for teachers that use these classrooms as platforms. Also be alert, what can you do about this? Well, one thing you can do is watch for this. There are set curricula out there that are organized and promoted by the national homosexuality groups. The Human Rights Campaign, which is the largest homosexual and transgender group in the country, has had a curriculum called Welcoming Schools for about 15 years. And they've had trouble getting into a number of schools because it was highly inappropriate. It promoted primarily gender ideology to elementary school students. They're not having as much trouble now. Watch for Welcoming Schools. You do not want that. It is always inappropriate. No one is born in the wrong sex body. No one is born homosexual. And we need to keep saying that and prevent children from being indoctrinated into even considering these identities and behaviors. So how can you avoid some of this? You need to examine every book that your child reads. You need to understand that you need to get social emotional learning out of your school. They are all infused with all of these agendas, and the sooner you can get them out of your school, the better. We have run into virtually no vendors of social emotional learning who do not promote DEI, social justice, all of the woke agendas, and the LGBTQ message, as well as inappropriate sexuality. The other area where this comes into the K through 6 classroom is through anti-bullying lessons. Those have been around for a while, where they implicitly endorse LGBTQ behaviors and identities, and by implying to kids that they're inborn like race. They are not like race. Do not let them do a racial equivalence with homosexuality and gender deviance. And you do not need to be kind to these behaviors. You need to be kind to people and accepting of people, but we do not. You can prevent bullying without embracing homosexual behavior or gender confusion. So one more slide then I think we have is we're finding more and more use of videos from an organization called Amaze at amaze.org. Just go there and poke around, and then Amaze Junior is the one for the elementary grades. It's a project of Advocates for Youth, which is heavily influenced by SIECUS, by all of the far, far left sexuality education vendors, by Planned Parenthood. They promote homosexuality everywhere. The picture that you have on the screen is a little boy saying that, what if I don't feel like a girl? And he's dressed, he looks very effeminate, and they're portraying that deliberately. Another slide in this same video says, as a little boy saying, what does it mean to be bisexual? There's so much inappropriate material in the amaze.org videos that you don't want them anywhere in your schools at all. So I urge you to check out everything your child brings home to you or doesn't bring home. Check out everything your child is learning and be brave. Make sure that you are ready to speak out and write emails and contact teachers and administrators for anything that you find that's inappropriate. That's all I have for today, and thank you so much for attending and for listening. And share this video widely. Thank you.